always starts getting a little confusing. So if you have questions, please stop me.
And that was done. It all makes perfect sense to me because I know the program.
We are an occupational child care class. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the vocational programs offered by, we are through special school districts right now. That does not mean that we are only for students with special needs. We do have students with special needs in our programs like anyone does, but we are a separate kind of division of special school district which deals with vocational education. And that's, our programs at North County Tech, South County Tech, and West County Tech are open to anybody in St. Louis City or county schools. We have students who come to the program who come for, well, let me backtrack a second. Students who are in one of the shop classes, as we call them, like child care or cosmetology or health occupations or auto mechanics or something, they can come to South Tech for a full day program. They can come, that is their high school. And once they're in they have to be a junior or a senior in high school to be in a shop. There is a sophomore program that they can come for that's an exploratory program, but once they're in my program, in the child care program, they're a junior or a senior. They can come to our program for 2 years, which is the full program. They can also just come for a 1-year portion of that program if they want. We have students who, as I said, come full-time. That's their high school that they go to. We have and they get their academic classes there as well. We have other students who go to their home school, we call it, their regular high school for half day, and then come to the tech programs for a half day, so that they're just in the shop class and they get their academics and electives and everything at their other high school. And they have transportation back and forth with buses. So I have a morning class, a morning shop, and an afternoon shop. I teach with another, two women actually right now. There are 2 of us who are instructors, myself and Kim Short, and we are the child care instructors. We have another assistant teacher who works with us, Linda Cope, and she helps us in the child care center. So we teach the class. We have the coursework, the child care coursework. We also run a daycare center, a small daycare center there. There's 2 classrooms, and there are 15 children at the most in one classroom at one time, 12 at the most in the other classroom. It's 2 to 5-year-old children. We have about 25 to 30 per day. It's a real small, nice, manageable sized center. Let's see. So anyway, our assistant teacher is basically a lead teacher in one of those preschool rooms in one of the child care centers. Kim and I, my co-teacher and I, take turns. For one session, I'll be the lead teacher in the older preschool classroom, and then we switch back and forth so that we both teach in the high school classroom, the academic part of the class, and we also then are the lead teacher and lab supervisor in the child care center. We usually take 4-week rotations. So what we try to do at the beginning of the school year, or before school starts actually, is we sit down and we look at all the subjects that we need to teach during the school year. This is our syllabus, our curriculum. She has certain things that she likes to teach and that I think she's good at teaching better than me. I have things that I like to teach, and we try to plot it out so that we're in the classroom and can teach the things, the units that we like to teach or that we feel good about teaching, and that then we're in the child care center for the other part of the time. We wouldn't have to switch back and forth like that. That's our choice. Sometimes that can get a little confusing to other people. We prefer it because, for one thing, it gives us some variety. When we get sick and tired of dealing with the problems that the high school kids in the classroom, we can switch over to the lab with the preschoolers, and it's just a different set of problems, and and challenges and rewards and things, and so it's nice. When we are in the child care center, we are the supervisor for the lab, the high school students as they're working in there. We do lab evaluations where we, at the end of their 2-week session in lab, we evaluate their work and give them suggestions and compliments and things that they did well. Basically, our high school students, from the viewpoint of our high school students, they come in, as a new student, they come into the program and they spend the first 4 to 6 weeks in orientation in the classroom. They don't directly have responsibility for the children, although we try to get them into lab as quickly as possible and let them do observations and begin to interact with the children. They are required to have a physical and a TB test, just like child care center workers are, and sometimes that's difficult getting everybody to comply with, but we manage somehow. They spend the first part of the year in orientation, kind of observing the children, learning about the basic overview of kind of the rules of do's and don'ts, what you do with the kids and what you don't, and how we run things. At the beginning of the year, we have our second-year students, the kids who are returning, who've been with us 1 year already, come into the lab, and they run the daycare center. They're just in there for the first 2 weeks. And that is nice in a couple of ways. For one thing, it's nice because when I'm in there, I have students who know what they're doing already. When the children are coming back after the summer break, they have familiar faces that they recognize, for the most part. Our returning kids, anyway, have familiar faces that they recognize from the year before, and they're really always excited to see them. The parents have familiar faces as they're dropping off the kids usually. And it gets the year off to a good start, and that gives us time to orient the new kids who are just coming into the program. Once that orientation time is over, once we kind of get everything settled in and the new students are oriented to the program, what we do is just take the whole group of the whole class, the morning and the afternoon class, and divide it into 4 groups. We just call it A, B, C, and D groups. And we try to, that first couple of weeks, we've kind of gotten a little bit of a feel for people's personalities. Our second-year students, our returning kids, we know kind of what their strengths and weaknesses are. We try to kind of gauge the new students as they are with us, too. And then we try to assign groups based on what we think will work as far as a team together. Kids who have good attendance balanced with kids who don't have good attendance, kids who are real energetic with kids who are a little more laid back, so that we have kind of a good balance of people. Sometimes that works really well, and sometimes we misjudge and it doesn't work, but for the most part, it's a pretty good system. Once we get our 4 groups, then, we go into this rotation system, and so I mentioned that Kim and I are on like a 4-week rotation. The students are on a 2-week rotation then. They're in the classroom for 2 weeks, and they're in lab for 2 weeks. So basically, when they come to high school, they're either in the classroom working on projects and coursework kind of stuff for 2 weeks on some kind of a unit, or they're in lab for the whole 2 weeks. And they have responsibility then for doing activities. They have chores assigned to them. Somebody gets to clean out the guinea pig cage. Somebody gets to serve snack every day, prepare snack, sweep the floors. Sometimes that's a rude awakening for the kids. What do you mean I have to do dishes here? We often have kids say, don't tell my mother I do this. Or when we compliment them on how well they clean the kitchen, don't tell my mom. I never do this at home. They do laundry, they do all kinds of things, and like I said, that is sometimes a rude awakening. In fact, we had one student this year said, why do we have to do all your work? You're doing the work of a child care center worker, and this is what, you do as a child care center worker. So we try to really base everything on that fact, that, we only ask our students to do what they would do on a job in a child care center, and we try to make it very realistic to them as far as their part in that. I say we try to make it realistic. It is semi-realistic in that we have probably for 15 children, we may have 5 adults in the room, well, 1 professional adult and then 4 to 5 high school students in the room. Although sometimes, I love my high school students, but sometimes 4 to 5 of them equals like half of an adult in the room. Sometimes the more of them there are, the less help you get actually. So there are, unique challenges to that kind of setting as opposed to where you're struggling with not enough hands around the room as well. Okay, let me hand out this. This is where it gets maybe a little confusing. This is our course outline. What we did, and again, sometimes this gets confusing to other people, but it seems to work best for us. We have, I guess it used to be a long time ago when the tech school started, they would have, like the morning class would be all juniors, and the afternoon class would be all seniors. Well, that's fine. Then you can teach a junior curriculum to the morning class, and you can teach your senior curriculum to the afternoon class. Well, now that there's so much half-day, so many half-day students coming from different high schools, what we found was that that was a real fallacy, that we had juniors and seniors mixed in both in the morning class and in the afternoon class. And so what we were trying to do, it didn't make sense to have all juniors in a group together in the lab and then have all seniors in a group together in the lab, because you have all your experienced people that could be role models in one group and then people that didn't know what they were doing in another group. So we decided to go ahead and just kind of combine the groups. We were having a hard time teaching, we'd have a room like this and you're trying to teach juniors on one side and seniors on the other side, and you're dealing with one group while the other group's over here chatting and talking and not doing what they were supposed to be doing. So it's very difficult to try to manage that and to find work that they could do on their own while you're working with somebody else or trying to lecture, and the distractions. Beyond that, you can imagine, this room is actually very similar to our room. We have the classroom. Then there's a separate little kitchen over to the side. So if you can imagine trying to teach and keep students' attention while kids are coming in to get snack and put things away in the kitchen and back and forth and everything, and then of course they're waving to their friends or talking to their friend as you're trying to get their attention. It's extremely distracting of an environment. And we were having a real hard time with trying to do this junior-senior year thing. So what we've come up with is kind of we can't totally get away from that, because obviously the kids are there for 2 years have to have something more than the kids that are there for 1 year. But what we've tried to do is combine as much as possible. So we have some units that we teach to the first-year students only, some units that the second-year students get, obviously, while the first-year students are doing these other units. And then we have some units that both first and second-year students do together, so we teach alternating years. So somebody who only comes for 1 year is not going to be able to get everything out of the program anyway. So if they come in an odd year, they're going to get the topics listed under the odd years. So let's say they're a first-year student, they would come in, this year is going to be 98, 99, so we'll teach the first and second year topics at the top, and then we'll teach the even year topics at the bottom, interspersed. They're not necessarily in that order, but those are the topics that we'll teach. And then this year we had taught the art, language, literature stuff. And that seems to work pretty well. I tell you, the units that we can teach to both the groups at the same time are so much easier than when you're trying to split your time between the two different groups. But we've adapted to that. Okay, as far as the students, I mentioned they go into 2-week rotations, so they're in class doing a unit for 2 weeks, and then they're in 1 to 2 weeks. Some of those units are only 1-week units, some of them are 2 weeks. Then they go into the lab. Their grades are made up of 50% of each. 50% classwork, kind of written project type work, and then 50% of their lab evaluation grade, which is based quite a bit on attendance, but also on performance. Attendance is what will hurt them the most. If they're there every day and they make a reasonable amount of effort, they will get at least a C in their lab portion of the class. If they miss a lot of days, it comes straight off their grade. Basically what we tell them is you're in lab for 10 days, basically, 2 weeks. If you miss a day, that's 10% off your grade. they can earn some of those points back by various strategies. One is to call in sick, trying to get them in the habit of calling in to work. A lot of them don't really have that work ethic, so try to get them to call in, let us know they're not going to be there, so we can make alternate arrangements. And they can get a few points back that way. We also have extra credit things that they can do. So, and if they're absent 3 or more days with the doctor's notice, we'll count it as 1 day instead of, we don't want to kill anybody's grade based on that. But what we find is that, and some kids have really good attendance, and then maybe they get the flu for 4 days, and they're out sick, and they're so upset about that. But, in the big picture, that is not going to hurt your grade. Even if we count it as 4 days, it's not going to kill your grade. It's those kids that are absent 2 or 3 days every time they're in lab, every other 2 weeks, that it adds up. If they've had perfect attendance and then missed 1 session 4 days, it's not going to hurt their grade, and it balances out. But those kids that have really poor attendance, it really does hurt their grade, and justifiably so, I think. I don't, child care, when we have our advisory meetings and we talk to directors and things, one of the first things they say is attendance is the most important thing. I'd love to have people that can work with kids and that are good, but if they're not there every day, it's not going to help me 1 iota. Mm-hmm. So we really, really stress, and that our students have a really hard time with that. They, many of them are at-risk, kind of borderline students and have very poor attendance, and they really don't get it, that why should that hurt their grade? As long as I make up my work, why should it hurt my grade? So we really, over and over try to stress that. So let's see, so 50% of their grade is classwork, 50% is lab. But we do, Kim Short and I, the other teacher and I, this is where it gets complicated. She has class grades, I have class grades, she has lab grades, I have lab grades. And then what we do is we keep track of our own grades, and then we put them together, average them, divide them out. That's their grade. What the problem with that is that it's really hard for a student sometime, or for us to tell a student where they are. Right now, today, here's what your grade is, because I have to check with her. I can say, well, here's what it looks like for my portion of it, but it depends on how well you did with Mrs. Short too. So. That is kind of a problem for us that we haven't quite resolved yet, besides the fact that, that gets into another issue we'll talk about in a second. Schedule-wise, as far as, for me, for our work day, we have to be at work at 7:10. The daycare center opens at 7:30. We're open. It doesn't meet everyone's needs, but we have enough enrollment that it meets enough people's needs that we don't worry too much about it at this point. But we're open 7:30 to 4:30, Monday through Friday, all the days that the school is open, that there are no teacher work days or something. When the students are there, the preschoolers are there for the most part. We open a week later than school starts so that we have time to set up and get basically everything's packed away. It's an empty room right now. So when school opens, we say hi to the students. Here's what you're going to be doing now. Start unloading boxes. And they work really hard the beginning of school and the end of school to pack up. Where was I going with that? Oh, we open 7:30 to 4:30. 7:30. This basically one of us, Kim and I, are on duty. One of us is in the classroom. One of us is in the lab, supervising lab and greeting parents and taking money, in tuition and everything. And as an aside, the tuition is very cheap for the preschoolers. It's $60 a week, basically $12 a day. So it's very reasonable for the parents. It's a real bargain, actually. There's not very many centers you can pay that much and then also have a teacher with a master's degree and 15 years of experience in the classroom with your preschoolers. Not that I'm so fantastic. The other teacher, Linda Cope, has an associate's degree from St. Louis Community Colleges and has worked more years than I have with children, and she's absolutely wonderful. So the parents really get a bargain, and they're very devoted to us, and they're very sweet, and parents really make a big deal in our job. They are so appreciative of the service that they receive, and are really good with the high school kids too. they really understand their role, I think, in helping the high school students learn, and are very understanding when the high school students maybe say something that I think, oh, it wasn't very tactful the way they said that, or very professional. And I think that the parents are really understanding. At Christmas time and things, they bring in all kinds of popcorn things and baked goods and stuff for the high school students, which always makes the high school kids. We even have one family that makes little ornaments for each of the high school kids. We have like 50 high school kids. They write their name. They get a list of the kids' names and write each of the students' names on each of the little ornaments. And it's just the sweetest thing in the world.
Wow.
You said, who can use those?
We're open to anybody, the community.
Anybody.
The only thing that we don't do, and it's kind of a controversial thing, is that we don't take high school kids, children. Because of the fact that it's a training program for other high school students, we really kind of feel like there would be too much personality, maybe problem. If we were going to do something for the high school students' children, we would want to have professional staff members that could work and do kind of a parenting program with them. And the program's just not set up for that right now.
Do you have like a parent orientation meeting where you kind of, maybe not some of the parents who are new to it, explain what's going on?
Yeah, at the beginning of the school year, because we're not a year-round program, because we kind of just start at the beginning of the year, we have a open house, kind of parent orientation, where the kids get to go into the high school. Everybody goes into the preschool room and they just kind of play for a while, and then we pull the parents aside and have a little meeting to let them know what the policies are, if there's any changes, and update forms and things like that. Gives the preschoolers, and especially ones who haven't been there before, time to see the program before they're left there for the day, since they can't really come and visit during the summer and do that. Back to kind of scheduling. One of us is in the classroom preparing for the day. And again, here's another confusing part of our program. We have some students who come first, second, and third period to us. We have some students who come second, third, and fourth period to us. So that's our morning class. It overlaps, but they're not all there at the same time for the whole time. The reason for that is that most of the shops, like if we taught cosmetology, I would have first, second, and third hour class. I would have 5, 6, and 7 hour class, and my fourth hour would be free for planning period and lunch. Unfortunately, we have children in the child care center during that time, so we can't operate with absolutely no students in the department. So, because there's just not enough of us adults, plus we wouldn't get a planning period, which we don't anyway. But anyway, so basically we have this overlapping group. And that works pretty well. Usually what we do is first hour and fourth hour is kind of their independent work time, and when we have instruction that we want to give them, we use that second, third hour time where the whole group is overlapping and it's all there. Then we have an afternoon class that comes 5th, 6th, 7th hour. They leave at 2:10. At 2:10, the other teacher, Linda Cope, comes in from 9, and she works till 4:30. So she's there, the afternoon person who closes and is there in the afternoon as a supervisor. We have students who work for us after school. We try to hire from within our department, the child care department. They get paid minimum wage, and they work from like 2:30 to 4:30 every day. It's a nice job. They can still work at Famous or something in the evening if they want and make a few extra dollars, and it's a really good experience for them. In some years we've had really good luck with that and had really great, dependable kids who have lasted for the whole year. And other years it's been a real struggle to make sure we had students after school every day. And sometimes, the attendance can be a problem, or they call in sick. And what do you mean there's no, basically Kim or I have to rearrange our plans and work till 4:30 if there's no students to work or if there's not enough. So that's kind of one of the drawbacks of my job, although it doesn't happen too often, and it's something, as a former daycare center director, you're used to that kind of stuff anyway. So to another teacher, it might seem like they couldn't imagine doing that, but for me, it just seems like part of the job. It's easier than my old job, I'll tell you. So anyway, I mentioned we don't really get a planning period. Next year, we're hoping that will improve. They're going to hire another full-time assistant for us to be in the department. But up until then, it was like last year we had a person who was kind of assigned to our department who helped a lot. This year they cut back a position, and we basically had nobody. They would try to give us somebody to give us breaks and give us a planning period, but anytime somebody was absent, they oftentimes have to pull that person. So oftentimes we really didn't have a planning period or break, which means that the grading piles up, and it's really hard to keep up with all the paperwork and get everything done. And I would end up taking a lot of work home, basically planning for the preschool or doing lab evaluations was something I would do at home because I just couldn't concentrate for that long at work. Anybody have questions? I'm thinking I've told you the major portions of the program.
What is your background?
My background is I have a master's degree in Human Development and Family Relations from the University of Missouri Columbia, and then I worked in child care centers. After that, I worked in Kansas City for a while. I worked for YWCA Center. I worked for YWCA for a couple years, and I worked for Children's World Learning Center when it used to be Daybridge Learning Center for 3 years. And then I moved to St. Louis, and I directed the daycare center at the University of Missouri St. Louis for 3 years, and I've been at this job since then.
Your students, do they have jobs outside of the school in daycare centers?
Sometimes. Many of them, because they're juniors and seniors in high school, some of them aren't 18 yet. A lot of them aren't. So they're not able to work as an paid employee in a licensed center account in ratio. So most of them have other jobs, other kinds of jobs, and not in child care. But we do try, that's our goal, is to try to, their purpose to be there is to be trained to work in a child care center, although we do also touch on issues like working as a nanny. We don't specifically train for that, but we do talk about kind of the similarities and differences, eventually perhaps opening their own home child care center or something. We touch on that, but that's not our main curriculum purpose.
When they graduate, how many go on into?
I haven't gotten those statistics real recently, but it's been improving every year. The recruiting has been better every year, and so we're getting students who are more serious about that that's what they want to do, whereas at first it was kind of like, I don't know what I want to do, so I'll just go take child care because it'll be fun, We've had that, our program has improved. We've gotten more demand. We've been full with waiting lists, so they can select kids that, they have a better group to select from, and instead of getting kind of the ragtag end of the group that didn't know what they wanted to do, we get the kids that really want to be in child care. So every year, and I'm not a good statistic person, and I haven't seen our statistics lately, but I know that we have improved dramatically. We have a lot of kids that are going on to community colleges. We have a lot of kids who, this year was the first year we had about 8 kids that graduated in January and went on to community college or to jobs. And we have about 25 or so graduate each year from the program. Many of them go on to do other things, but I would say our numbers are looking pretty good right now. Some people get into the program and then they say, I used to think I wanted to work with children, but this isn't what I thought it was, or I want to be a pediatrician, or I want to go on work in a pediatrician's office rather than work directly with children in child care, and that's fine too.
Mm-hmm. How long has the South County Tech been in place?
South County Tech has been there forever. I know my brother and sister graduated from there, and the program's been open for over 20 years. I'm not exactly sure what the first year was.
The child care program, you mean?
I don't know if it says it here or not. We're in Sunset Hill, kind of behind Lamar Park, off Flinders, West Boston Road. You're welcome to come anytime. I don't know if it says only recruiting for your program. There are central office recruiters that are assigned to different school districts that work with the counselors in different school districts.
So this is one example of what I was telling you, how, as Lisa said, there are counselors who come into the school, city and county, right? And recruit for the various programs at South, West, and North County Tech. which, as I was telling you, sometimes creates a little competition for those of us with our own personal programs in the comprehensive high schools.
Yeah, it's still kind of a tenuous, program, a plan. I mean, there's not a big picture, I don't think, and everybody, instead of saying, okay, special school district is going to do it for everybody, sometimes people want to do their own little thing, or, it's not quite decided which way it should be yet, I think, and then that can cause some problems.
I was wondering, you had mentioned that you ended up getting a number of at-risk students in your class. But then you mentioned that there's a waiting list and you end up getting students that maybe are some of the students that are going to be trying harder. So I'm wondering, how do you gear your curriculum? Do you have to try to lower some of your standards for these kids or what?
Yeah, our student population is kind of different. We've gotten away, for a while, I know when my brother and sister were in school, it wasn't quite so much like this, but it was kids that, maybe weren't happy with their high school or just really wanted more hands-on and went to tech school, and that was fine. Then it really got to be negative for a while, I think, before I came back to the vocational program, before I started there. Apparently it had just really gotten into the dregs, kind of, it was like, oh, if you can't do anything else, we'll send you to tech school, and it has very bad, poor image, and a part of, being part of special school districts may have had something to do with that as well, that a lot of times when I say I work for special school district, people assume you're in like a training program for special needs students only, and that's not the case. So there were a lot of misconceptions. Well, there's a big effort to do more public relations and get out and educate the public more, and part of that was due to some of the desegregation case, and I don't know, I'll mention that in a minute. But
Frank told them all about it.
okay, yeah, that's a big mess, actually. But anyway, part of that was to prove that they could do better.
There's an article today, take this out.
It's on the radio too.
Oh, really?
About the judge, I think, what is it going to be special? Or
Yeah,
or
should be
career?
coming up here.
And she was involved in that, your job was,
Well, yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about that.
yeah.
Anyway, it has definitely improved that we have gotten, when I first started, our students were really low, functioning as far as academic skills, and just really poor attitudes, and weren't exactly dedicated to being in child care. I think they were just kind of there. And there were still some neat kids, and we still tried to do the best we could, but it was a much different group than what we have now. Now we have a real mix, and there are kids that are real sharp and go on to, most of them go on to a community college. I don't know if I've had anybody recently go straight to four-year college. So that kind of gives you a perception of the group. And oftentimes they'll go on to jobs and go to school part-time. It is hard to balance. I mean, we have some kids that can fly through their paperwork and are sharp and get everything done, and some kids that really struggle through very simple things. And I think probably I hope we do a good job of balancing that. The basic paperwork kind of stuff. We have a textbook, and I should have brought it. We have a textbook that basically the unit, we give them like a worksheet, kind of a study guide thing to fill out through the book.
Name of the book that you use.
It's Working with Young Children, Judy Herr's book, and we use that. It was supposed to be just a junior year book, but we found that it had enough information. We use it for both the junior and senior program, and just use one book for the whole 2 years, and it's plenty to do. We try to, the students who have higher abilities maybe, try to provide other challenges for them, either by doing extra credit work, having them help us with stuff. Like a lot of times, if I have a student who's really sharp and can do record keeping and paperwork and filing and stuff. We give them extra, you know, they become like the department helper, you know, and usually they're really willing to do that. We try to give extra credit points for things like that. We also will encourage them to maybe go a little farther in a project or something maybe than somebody else would. Like if I know somebody has the ability and the perceptiveness to be able to do a little bit more than maybe what the project basically includes, I'll just encourage them to go a little farther with it. And then, you know, try to grade accordingly. Try not to lower standards too much. We were just talking the other day about how poor some of the students' writing skills are. The grammar and the English is just horrible sometimes, and we're struggling with trying to, you know, I mean, I don't know how to teach English. I'm not an English teacher, but to try to balance that with having high standards for the, you know, or at least acceptable standards for what you're passing through your class, or who you're passing through your class. We do have competencies. I'm not sure how much you guys have talked about that. Our program, actually Special School District, I think, had this even before the state had it. But we are now changing. We had our own set of competencies. The state had their competencies. We're trying to now dovetail so that ours are the same as the state. Basically, the competencies are kind of your objectives for the class. We have our units, and these are the things the topics we try to learn about, but the competencies are the things that students are supposed to know how to do when they leave the program. Now, they don't have to know every single one of those things. We are in the process of identifying probably about half of those as core competencies that are entry level. This is what we want you to know how to do when you walk into a child care center. Many of those then would go on to community college level. If they then went on to Merrimack or Low Valley or somewhere, they would build on their competencies and add some of the higher level things. There's a few on there I'm sure you'll pick out right away, like, oh, I don't think a high school student could do that. And that's really true. What we do with our competencies, some of those competencies are things that they demonstrate in the classroom during the coursework. Some of them are things that they demonstrate on the job in the lab. We try to assign activities so that they get experience with, like, you know, I'll look down, well, let me backtrack a second. What I do, we keep a list, a competency list for each student in a notebook. So Group A has a notebook, and each student has a list in there. And then we'll try to make notations next to competencies if we, like, I'm not as familiar with this list as the one I've been using for 7 years, but let's say communicate with family members. If we have a student who notices a child's not feeling well, they may walk that child down to the nurse's office, come back, and then we have the student, while we're kind of standing next to them, coaching them, call the parent and say, you know, this is what happened, this is what I noticed, and here's what the nurse said to do. And then if they do a good job of that, we'll document that and either give them that competency or at least know that they've practiced it. And sometimes we'll require them to do it a couple of times before we actually give them that competency on the list.
Did you say that goes into their notebook?
It's a notebook that we keep for the group, and then each person has their list in it. So then when I'm assigning activities, let's say I have an art activity that I want to assign to somebody, I'll glance through the notebook and see who needs an art project. Or so-and-so has that competency already, so I'm not going to assign them that. I'll assign that to so-and-so and watch how they do that activity. Now this is a part of your record-keeping system, which goes back to somewhat like the VIM system. Right, it is basically. It is the VIM system. It's just a record-keeping system that you have to have on all the kids. And we fill out a Scantron sheet quarterly on the students as to what we feel like they have documented or shown us that they could do. And some of those things, like I said, are in the coursework, like there may be a project, they have to get an 80% or better to get that competency. And we try to keep that documented. So that, and then what we tell them too is at the end of that 2 years, that list that they print out for them of all the competencies, that's what you take on the job with you. A lot of times people come in and they say, do we get a certificate? Well, yeah, if you complete 2 years and you get this much attendance, you get a certificate. But nobody's going to say, do you have your certificate from South Tech with you, you know? They're not going to look for that because there's not a child care license or something that you're going to get as a person. But your competency list, when you get that printout, that's going to be something you can take on a job and say, look, my teachers say I can do all these things, and a teacher should, or a director should be able to look at that, and if they have a lot of things on the can-do list and nothing on the did-not-do list, that's a good sign. If they have, this much on the can-do list and this much on the did-not-demonstrate list, then they should know that that was not one of our more successful students. So that's something that's the kind of the specific, and our students are real driven by this. We were just talking about that the other day, how funny it was, that they don't really get points for doing the competencies so much. It's really a separate from the grade system. They may get a grade for a project they do, and they have to get 80% or better to get the competencies, but they don't really earn points for racking up competencies. They just get this nice little list. But the students really they're sometimes, some of them are in their book going, now which competency do I need? Well, what do I have to do to get this? And, all we have to do is say, well, it's a competency, and they're like, oh, okay, I'll clean the refrigerator. And it's so funny, because it's like, you kind of think, they're not. Why are they so driven by that? But it's kind of like that. My coworker compared it to the try it, on the brownie badge or something. It's like getting your little badge on your patch on your thing. Your vest.
I was going to say that if you'll notice that Lisa's child care competency list, again, this comes from the instructional materials lab in Columbia, and there is a certificate that. Does the certificate come with your competency?
Well, see, we haven't used the instructional materials lab up until this year, maybe. The special school district always they had actually started this competency list before the state had or something. Anyway, we had this finished list already. And so we've always used kind of a separate system for it. And now we're trying to really make sure that we articulate with all the other programs and use the same terminology and everything. So I'm not sure how that's all going to work out. Actually, we just sat down last week and proposed that this would be our competency list. We had our advisors we have an advisory board meeting twice a year where we have people from the community college, we have directors from daycare centers, we have people that work like at Child Daycare Association and things. We try to even have a parent from maybe the child care center come in, and we just talk to them about, what's the state out in, what are you finding when you're trying to hire people? What are you finding when you do hire people? And what kinds of things do they need more training with? What are the big problems? What do you want us to try to address with our students? And then we had them look at this competency list and say, which are the things that you think are the most important things that students need to learn when they leave our program? And so we're working on, those are the things then that we were supposed to focus on. We're supposed to have a certain percentage of students who accomplish those core competencies and things.
So how many people make up your advisory committee?
We probably have 15 people on the advisory committee. That usually our meetings are about 8 people, though, everybody's busy.
Do you ever worry about, the children, safety of the children, at the beginning, when you say you have students that come in and aren't really committed to child care and things like that, and then, having all these young preschoolers in the room? Do you ever have escalated or whatever?
Yes, it's always a concern. Certainly we keep in mind liability and the safety of the kids, but basically there's always a professional adult in the room with them, either myself or Kim or Linda. We may be in and out for a couple minutes at a time, but they're never by themselves in the room, and there's always other high school students around. We all definitely get feel for certain students, and occasionally we'll have students come up and say, so-and-so was, said this to a child, or so-and-so grabbed that child by the arm or something, and we'll be like, well, okay, tell me about it. If it seems like, we would certainly either follow through with discipline, or if it seemed like it was kind of a wishy-washy thing. There are times that the three of us talk and say, you need to watch this person at nap time, don't leave them by themselves to where you can't see them or something, because maybe they're a little too rough with the kids, or they have a hard time with discipline or something. And then we know the students who are really, really good, that we trust and that would be wonderful and would never let anything happen to the kids. And so, it's just like if you worked at a daycare center, basically, as a director of a center or as a lead teacher in a room, you don't always have the most professional people to work with, so you have to kind of judge and know what people are good at and what people aren't good at, and then adapt to their strengths and weaknesses. So basically, there's always an adult supervisor in the room, and that's why sometimes we don't get our planning periods and breaks, because we don't leave the preschool room without an adult professional person in
It's
there.
hard for the kids having three different, like, teachers, or do
They seem to like it, actually. Sometimes I think it's a little hard for them, but I think what's nice about it is that we all, everybody has personalities, and so we all have different students that we click with, and they have the opportunity to have 3 different role models, and so they can kind of pick the one that fits their personality the most as their role model. There are students who don't get along with Mrs. Short who like working with me better. There are students who I like working with who Mrs. Short doesn't really click with, and vice versa. There are other students who they're like, oh, I like the way Mrs. Short teaches this part of it. So there's some kids that like being with me in the classroom, some that like being with her in the classroom, some that like, both of us. Everybody likes Mrs. Pope. She's wonderful. She doesn't get on as much as we do. So, I think it's kind of nice sometimes, and it gives them a feel for how they work with different people, and it also gives us a feel for how they work with different personalities as well, which is such a big part of childcare. I mean, that was something as a director that, I was constantly looking at in people I was hiring it was almost more important than how well they worked with children, was how well they could work with the team, because it's such a team approach. It's not like an elementary class where one teacher's by herself in the room. It's usually 3 or 4 and the whole center working together.
I was just thinking of my own child, he has great separation, and I was thinking,
Oh, for the preschool you're talking about? I thought you meant the high school.
Well, no, that too, but I was thinking, with you there, and, he doesn't recognize you, doesn't want to get out of the car,
Well, for the preschoolers, now Linda Cope is the lead teacher in the younger classroom, and she is there as their consistent person. She's never pulled to teach.
Not teaching.
Yeah, she doesn't come over to the high school classroom. She's always a lab supervisor in the younger classroom. And we found when we started that really helped a lot, because some of the younger kids were having some problems with separation. And that really has addressed it. Now, she's not always there. She comes in at 9. She's not always there first thing in the morning. But most of them will then bond to Tim or I in the morning, and that's fine. It's not, and I would say 90% of the time we have no problem with that. That's, it's no more than a normal child care center would have as far as kids having trouble coming in the morning. There are some kids who I wouldn't recommend the program for. Kids that are very, very, very sensitive to individual differences, who have maybe some behavior problems, preschoolers who have behavior problems, that really need one consistent person to make the rules for them. It's probably not the best place for them, because there's too many high school kids in and out of the room and dealing with them, and one may be firm, one may be lenient, and so, but it's been very rare. I wouldn't say it's for 100% for everybody, but it's been very rare that we've had a major problem. The other thing we do is, like, at the beginning of the school year, I take the first 6 weeks in lab. So it's not just a 4-week thing, it's the first 6 weeks I'm the one in lab that kind of gets things started, so that gives the kids 6 weeks before and then we start talking about Mrs. Short coming in, and, we try to make the transition easy. And the kids actually, this year, they kind of think it's fun, too. When Mrs. Short will walk in the room, they'll be like, is it your turn yet? Are you going to be our teacher yet? And they do that back and forth with us. And so then this year we got where we'd say, so you know what? Next week, I have to go back in with the high school kids. Mrs. Short's going to be over here with you, and you guys are going to be doing some fun things. And I'm going to be the sad one, because I won't get to come in and see you every day. And they thought that was really funny. And so then, but I think I kind of forgot about it. I was just being dramatic. On Monday morning, I walk in, and they're like, are you sad today, Mrs. Thompson? Are you sad? Are you okay? I was like, yeah, why? And they're like, because you're the sad one today. Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm the sad one today. They thought that was really fun.
What are the ages? You said you had the young group, and
We have we split them in rather than a mixed age group, we kind of split them into two groups and for a purpose. But the younger classroom is at the beginning of the school year, it's basically the 2 to 3.5-year-olds. And we just kind of split it down the middle. And then the older classroom is basically 3.5 to 5-year-olds. Now, that varies. If we had a group that was skewed to the older end or to the younger end, it's arbitrary, basically. We just kind of divide them in half and put them in that way. There's not a whole lot of difference between the two programs, although the younger classroom, they do just the more sensory, kind of shorter attention span, more changes, more just real hands-on sensory kinds of things. Lots of music, movement. They have a lot of gross motor equipment in the room. The older kids, we do try to do the kind of the pre-kindergarten preparation kind of things as the year goes on with the older kids. It is kind of an arbitrary decision. And then, there are a lot of programs that go into mixed age groups, and we consider that where all the kids would be in the same groups to mix together. But what we really want to do is demonstrate to the students how more of a toddler kind of curriculum so that they could see that what's appropriate. So many times, and as a director, I found that the one biggest misconception with child care was, kids have this image that they're going to sit the kids down and do little worksheets and practice their ABCs and things, and to try to get the message across that that's not real appropriate for a 2-year-old, and that's not what they're developmentally ready to do. So we really try to demonstrate to them kind of this difference, even though it's a fairly subtle difference in our age group, that this is appropriate. This is why we do these things in the sunshine room, and we don't expect them to sit the whole time, or we don't do as long a circle time, or we don't read as many long books or things. And this is how we do it in the rainbow room, where the kids are a little bit older and can handle a little bit more or something. So they get to see kind of the difference between that.
No, go ahead.
I was wondering, is there a way for the high school students to earn any kind of college credit?
There is, we have an articulation agreement with the community college that if they come to our program for 2 years and I think make an A or a B and have a certain amount of attendance, like 90% attendance or 85% or something, they can get 1 3-hour class for them. Their basic, I think it's the basic like introduction to early childhood class or something. The child care program has been available for years. It has been there probably 25 years. They had a full-time daycare center for a while, then kind of dropped off and did just a part-time preschool for a while. And then when I came back 7 or 8 years ago, they were going back to a full-day program. And the first year I was there, I don't know what they thought they were going to do, but we had 7:30 to 2:30 was the daycare center, and we had a few teachers' children, that was about it. But and then the next year we went to 7:30 to 4:30, and we got an assistant to hired to work with us. So. And then we've been building up and got real full enrollment now, both for the preschoolers and for the high school students.
I'm wondering how people find you. I mean, I live in South County, and when my kids were little, it was always, who are we going to get to watch them?
Yeah.
It's really good.
We're listed through Child Daycare Association. We're also just basically word of mouth. We really haven't had much problem
Otherwise,
finding
you're going to get
people.
too many problems.
Yeah, exactly. We don't really want to deal with a huge waiting list. We are accredited by the Missouri Voluntary Accreditation Association. We're up for reaccreditation in October, so we've been accredited for 2 years. We are not a licensed center at this point. We're exempt from licensing. That is something that we would like to do. It's been kind of like we've been swimming just to stay above water at the moment, just get grades done and papers graded and things, so we haven't really bitten off that hunk yet. But we did want to, we have been getting grants through the Early Childhood Grant Program, and that was part of the requirement was that you work for accreditation. So we were really kind of forced to do that, but been very excited that we actually went through and got a very glowing report from our accreditation team and everything, and that it was really a nice boost to our program. It's a good experience.
Excuse me. Do the 2-year-olds have to be potty trained?
No,
Okay.
we do diaper changing in the younger classroom, which is nice. We work on potty training with them.
Mm-hmm.
got those cute little toilets. But we also have a diaper table, which is kind of nice, because the students need that experience as well.
Well, yeah, and we talked to some different preschools, even at age 2. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
a lot
like,
of them do
who's going to
say
be
that.
potty trained at age 2? But a lot of them say, oh, no. You know, so if you got a girl that might be potty trained at 2,
Yeah.
maybe, but,
Yeah, there are a lot that do that, but we are able to not do that, which is nice.
yeah.
We do say that when we have had this issue come up, that by the time they go to the older classroom, they need to be potty trained.
Uh-huh.
That we were not going to do diapers over there. Sometimes those kids need that little extra. Nope, sorry, you're not wearing diapers in the rainbow room.
Now, how many credits do the students get for taking the class?
They get, this is the first you're asking me the things that I don't really keep track of. They get, whatever the normal periods, they get a half credit for each period. So they get like 1.5 credits per semester, I think, right? I don't do the guidance office stuff much. I just teach them when they get to me.
You know, you were saying, I understand what you were saying about they go this place a half day and you know, there's 2 different groups, and I'm kind of confused about that. Let's say just I'm a student and I've come to the program and I come in on Monday morning. I'm going to be in a normal classroom with math and reading and all the other basics.
If you're a half-day student, let's say you go to Clayton High School.
Okay.
You might come to us in the morning, come to child care. You leave at 10 o'clock, you get on a bus, you go back to Clayton High School, and you take your
Regular
academic
curriculum.
classes.
Okay.
If you're a full-day student, you could come to us, and in the morning you might go to your academic classes and come to your child care class in the afternoon.
So they have regular curriculum on that site also. There would be a
We don't have as many options, probably, as most high schools do. We don't have as many options for electives and a variety of courses as much, although that we've been trying to build as enrollment builds. They've been building in more classes, so it's better than when I first got there. The other thing, some students choose to stay at their home school because of sports and extracurricular programs that we really don't have. We have a basketball team that has done really well, but that's volleyball, but not a whole lot. You know, if somebody wanted to do cross country or track or something, they usually would stay at their other high school. Some kids really just want to graduate with their graduating class at their high school. So we've even had kids that come for their junior year, they'll come full day. They may even come for a semester of their senior year, but then go back half day for the last, you know, when the seniors are doing all their stuff and everything, because they want to be part of their home school.
You go on the high school campuses and recruit those?
I don't, but there are recruiters for the district who do. Yeah, that's all they do. And then we have open house once a year where we work a Saturday, and like 7th and 8th graders are invited especially to come look at the program, but anybody can come. But they're trying to get kids to kind of plan that direction. And we have high school kids that come tour the program, and the counselors will bring them around. But we don't directly do a lot of recruiting. It's, you know, and then there's, and I'm sure you've talked about your classes, the marketing that you do just through your students, you know, the word of mouth through our students, and a lot of times they'll bring their friends, you know, or their so-and-so's friend that enrolls the next year. We've got pretty good PR that way.
Your students can come from anywhere, city and county. Do you have an idea of
what
where they
percentage.
come from, or?
Not a good statistic person. Just off the top of my head, I think actually, it's really hard to tell because you get that mix of city kids who come to the county programs for DSAG. So we've got kids that come from Parkway, but they may live in the city. You know, so it's really hard for me sometimes. I'm like, well, I know you go to Rockwood or you go to Parkway, but they may live in my neighborhood in the city or something. And so it's hard to then know whether you're counting them as a county kid or a city kid. But I would say it's probably pretty half and half as far as knowing where kids live, and it's a big group, and that can make placement real hard. You know, when our students are going out on the job, they're going all over the city. You know, they're looking for jobs that are in their neighborhood, in this neighborhood, in that neighborhood, in this neighborhood. So it's really hard as a teacher to have a handle on enough places and enough people that you can say, oh, I know so-and-so over there, why don't you go talk to them? That's a challenge that, luckily, I live in the city, so I know some of the city programs. I grew up in South County, so I know some of that. Kim Short lives out in Baldwin, so she kind of knows the West County area. And then Linda lives in the city also, but has worked in lots of different programs. So, and Linda and I are both real involved in AYC, the St. Louis Association for Education of Young Children. We try to kind of network through that too. Like, we had a student who had worked for us last year who was really good. She wanted to go work at a daycare center that we knew was just horrible. So, a lot of these kids fall into these, they need, they said they need somebody tomorrow. It's like, that's fine, don't work there, and I was like, no, I've got a good center. I know some good centers. You're a good person, they'll want to, don't take that job. Well, she ended up taking the job, hated it, so then she was, on the phone, I hate this, they're leaving me with too many kids, and, this and that happens, and I'm like, okay, there's an AYC meeting Monday night, you're coming with us, and we took her to the meeting with us, and I just walked up to Michelle Ottinger, who's the director of Martha Round, and Susan Catapano, the director of Professor Barry, and I'm like, this is Pam. Pam is wonderful. She worked for us last year. Her house burned down. She missed one day of school. And I was like, she has wonderful attendance. She's a hard worker. She's great. And they were like, great, we'll hire you. So she ended up getting a job there, and she loves it, and she stayed there.
What did you say AYC is?
The Association for Education of Young Children, the early childhood professional organization.
How did you know that this particular place was not suitable for the students?
Well,
I mean, was it word of mouth or what you actually saw,
a little bit of
we've been talking
It's
about,
a-
the
I won't
on-site
mention any
visitation
names,
that they would be
but,
doing, but
yeah.
in other words,
It's a chain. It's a small chain that I have visited one of their centers that I thought was horrible, and I always tell students, I don't try not to badmouth other places. I just say, I had an experience that wasn't very good. That was many years ago. They may have changed it. A lot of it depends on the director. But you need to go and visit. I said, you need to go and look. You need to spend some time there. We tell them this, and they still end up getting into situations that they don't want to get into. And we tell them, too, like, if you go out and you apply to daycare center, they get that, they really think I'm great, and I can do it, and I can change the world, and I can help these little kids, and then they're calling you 10 days later going, I had 20 kids by myself.
You mentioned that you participated or had something to do with the court cases.
Well, we had no choice but to be part of the court case. There is, and I don't know all the technicalities of it, but at the moment, vocational education is being fought over by special school districts and the new career education district that the judge created to address some of the DSEG problems. And anyway, I guess it was 3 years ago. I don't know. This has been going on for so long.
Frank gave them all he gave them all the history, but you were actually affected by it.
Yeah. Basically, 3 years ago, we were told that the CED, the Career Education District, was going to take over vocational ed, that they would make it a smooth transition for the students. They would accept all the students who were already in their programs. They wouldn't cancel any programs unless it was really poor enrollment, but they wouldn't necessarily take all the teachers. There was no guarantee they were going to accept teachers. And so we had to apply for our jobs. There was that year, I was so angry that year because we had to, basically it wasn't just put your resume together and apply for the job. It was put your resume together, answer 20 essay questions, which were 20 pages long. It took me 15 hours to do this. 15 hours that I should have been grading papers and doing things for my job. It was extremely stressful and frustrating. And here, I'm spending 15 hours to answer these questions just to get my job, back, the job I've been doing, Why can't you look at whether I did a good job at it or not, So then we did the application, they accepted our application, then, I can't remember all the chronology, but basically then they said, no, special district's going to have it for another year. So then we worked the special district for that next year. Came to the end of the year, and they said, okay, CED is supposed to take over July 1st again. We've got your application from last year. You don't have to do that again, but you're going to have to interview for your job this year. And it was a panel, it was like a scored interview, where they ask you certain questions, and you have a certain answer, and they score your answer. And they said that basically the people who had been doing the job, special school district people, had no priority over somebody who just came from outside. The only thing was if you had equal scores, then the special district person would be given priority. But basically you had no priority over somebody else. So that was really nerve-wracking for most of us, not knowing whether you have a job or not. We went through the interview process, found out. Luckily, all three of us were hired in our department, so that was, because we were like, oh, what if one of us doesn't get hired and the other two do? And that was very stressful again. But we all three did get hired. I think that was last summer. I don't know. Anyway, we worked as of July 1st. CED was supposed to take over. They switched our insurance. I tore up my insurance card. 15 days we worked for CED, and we were back with special school districts, according to the court. All of a sudden, I'm looking through the newspaper one morning, and it's like, what? I'm working for special district again? And I had to go back and change my insurance, and I went into my allergy doctor, and I said, this is really strange, but she said, oh, you must work for special school district. I just had somebody else come in there. And so anyway, we had our job. This year, basically, what they're telling us, again, we're supposed to be working for CED as of, I think, July 1st, a couple of days from now. And I'm much more casual about it. Yeah, we're supposed to be back with Career Education District. I'm much more casual about it this year. It seems like we've been through so many things. And now, basically what they said is if we gave you a contract last year, we'd honor it this year. So we knew all three of us had our jobs either way. We've gotten contingency contracts in both districts that say, if we have control, you get this. If you they have control, you're with them.
Each time you've gotten a new job, you've gotten a pay increase, right?
We've been basically frozen in salary for the last few years. And in fact, this is something that was really kind of a burn, too, is that CED, when we were interviewing last year, they put out their salary schedule, and it was like, well, better than special school districts. So it's kind of like, oh, well, hey, that's cool. If they want to hire us and they're going to do a better salary schedule, that's great. Then when they actually did get the district for the 15 days, they said they were going to hire us at exactly the same salary we were at because they weren't sure how much money they were going to have. So I was like, oh, that's nice. Reel us in, and then it's been crazy. Of course. And,
What's been involved in
Yeah.
What is the public report on this? I mean, I know that they've got so many hearings and stuff.
yeah, it's basically in the court. Now there has been some things that went through the legislature. Like there's a bill they passed this year that said that if a district overtook another district, then they would have to grant like at least tenure and seniority to the teachers that they overtook or whatever. Because they were saying we weren't going to necessarily have any of that and everything. I think it's a big joke, though. Last week we heard special school district, we've had these 1% and 2% increases and salary freezes and stuff. And now they're giving us 6 to 10% increases next year. I'm like, yeah, they probably know they're not going to have us next year. Sure, we'll give you a 6 to 10% increase, but you're not going to be with us.
Yeah.
Now it's gotten comical. I mean, it was very frustrating and maddening at first because it's just like, it's so stupid. You couldn't believe people could be so stupid about things. But now it's gotten like, whatever.
Today's article mentions something that all three of the schools are racially balanced. And so they don't really see, or that's
Well, there were all these different goals that special schools were supposed to be meeting, and, you know, it's that whole thing of measurement, and how do you measure whether you're you know, if you get a population of kids that have a lot of problems, but then you can't, you know, some of the measures were like, do they all have jobs? Do they keep their jobs for 3 years? Do they get jobs within their field, you know? And it's like, you know, I don't know. There, you know, some of the measures I thought, the group that I had 7 years ago, if you measured my success as a teacher by whether or not they went into child care and stayed in that field for 3 years, I would be a horrible teacher. I don't think I'm a horrible teacher. I think I'm a good teacher, but I don't think that measures what we were teaching. And because it's a non-educator that it makes them all. And, you know, and then they would look at, like, attendance and absenteeism and things, and it's like, well, you know, you got to look at the population, too, in the group, and you can't necessarily compare apples and oranges. And that's not to make excuses. I mean, I do think that vocational ed should be held to some accountability standards, but, you know, you got to have a feeling that the measure is fair, at least, to what you're teaching and what you're doing. That's kind of a problem. I have occupational, an occupational teaching certificate. Yeah.
So when you do your labs, when you actually work with the children, you're actually getting your hours.
You know, I've never had to renew yet. I've had a temporary, and then I've gotten my 5-year, and I think my 5 years up next year, so I haven't had to renew it. My background, I didn't have a teaching certificate. I didn't even have elementary, early childhood education. My background was home economics, back with UC, home economics, child and family development, because I didn't think I ever wanted to teach in, you know, regular public school settings. I wanted to work with families and children, and so then I worked in child care centers as a director for years. I was up at Umsville, and my old roommate from college was married to the assistant principal at South Tech, and one night he called me and said, hey, we've got this job in the child care department, we're going to add another teacher, and they're really looking for somebody. Tim's background is more in vocational home economics, and that end of it. So he said, we're really looking for somebody who has experience out in the workforce, that has a good feel for the community and child care, and network with the, you know, people out there, and somebody who's been a director. And it's like, I'm talking to Michelle about it, and she said, you'd be perfect for the job. And I was like, oh, I don't want to teach high school. You know, that would be ridiculous. I would never, ever. I hated high school. I don't want to go back. And he's like, well, you know, and he talked to me for like an hour on the phone about, one of it was like, well, how much money do you make? And you work 12 months a year? Well, you could work 9 months a year. And I was like, oh. And so then, you know, after I talked to him, I was still thinking, oh, this is silly. I don't know anything about teaching high school, but I'd be stupid not to apply for the job, so I guess I'll apply for it and just see what happens. And it was also in the middle of the court case, so I applied in like June, didn't hear anything all summer, so I thought, well, they must have hired somebody else, it's no big deal. I really liked my job, I didn't want to leave. I was like, oh, that's fine, they found somebody else. I'm sure they found somebody better qualified than me. And then it was like 2 weeks before school started, in the middle of August, I get this call, and they're like, hi, I'd like to start up an interview for this. And I just like dead silence on the other end, and she goes, well, are you still interested? I'm like, well, yeah, but I just didn't think you were anymore. And it's like, oh, no, well, we've been in the middle of this court battle. We couldn't do any hiring, so now we need to, you know, do the interviewing. I said, well, sure, I'll interview for it. I'm very flippant about the whole thing, actually, because I didn't really care if I got the job. And I went in and got hired, and then it was like 2 weeks before school started, and I was trying to get notice that, you know, Umsville, and I ended up working there for a while at both places, and I didn't want to start, you know, they said, well, you don't have to start at the beginning of the year. There's a teacher, she could start the year. But I didn't want to come in a few weeks into the school year and have students not know me and stuff, so I was like, no. Especially going into totally foreign territory. I mean, I had not been in high school since I was in high school. I had no clue what they did in this high school, so it's like, no, I want to go in at the beginning and get my feet wet as the kids are getting their feet wet. And it was a shocker, but then basically it was a, you know, question and you know, they thought I could get certified, but I had to go through and make sure I could get certified. They counted my hours, the years that I had worked in childcare on the salary scale, which was nice. I
Wow.
started with 7 years because I had worked in childcare for that. That really helps a lot. And then I had to take 3 vocational home economics classes to get my certificate. So I had like a temporary until that, and this was one of them, and 2 other classes that Dan Price taught. And then I got my certificate. So like I said, I haven't renewed yet. I haven't been through that experience.
Did they help pay for that, or did you have to do that on your own?
I did it on my own. Some
You already
district
had
now will start, it's paying for some classes, but I haven't done that. Yeah, I had my master's.
You already had your master's when you went into that.
Any other
That's
questions?
interesting.
Well, I'm certainly glad that you were able to come and share your expertise with your program, and of course there are 2, one at South County and one at
Yeah, North
County.
County Tech also has a child care program. We don't have one at West County Tech. There's different programs at each of the schools. Some of them have, there's more than one program. The North County also has a child care center and a good program as well. They're up off 270 and Elizabeth, isn't it? They're hockey. Some good people up there.
One more. I keep having this problem. I hope other people are too, in calling these different things. You call your program a vocational cooperative,
Well, it's called,
occupational.
within the school district, they used to call it vocational. Now they call it applied technology services. But officially,
No, another one
it is an occupational child care service.
Okay, the vocation would be out.
That was really confusing to me when I took the
Cooperative,
class.
occupational. Right, because in some of the books you read different things.
The whole umbrella of
Yeah.
all of it.
Of the work, to school to work program.
Vocational is everything.
Now, when you talk to somebody outside of the field, you know, somebody in the public, you could say vocational education, and that kind of means different to them than it does.
But anything under that umbrella would be work, school to work program.
Under vocation.
Yeah.
Reminds me of the preschool versus daycare issue we have in
Yeah.
child care. Is that a preschool center or just daycare? Anyway. Well, I hope that information, and I almost forgot to say too, I don't know if any of you would be interested, or if you know somebody who's interested, but we are hiring that full-time assistant teacher for next year in the child care department. Would probably be,
Was that in yesterday's paper?
it may have been.
I think I was looking at that.
It probably was.
But
But we're looking for someone who would fit into the department real well and be somebody that would basically probably work in the preschool rooms with the children and supervise high school students in there, and then also help with some grading papers and things. It's a pretty low stress job if you can put up with high school kids, some of the preschoolers. But, you know, it's hard to find somebody who wants to work with both high school and preschool kids. It could be good.
I could have one with Deborah.
Oh, you got Debbie?
But I didn't get one.
Okay, I get Ramona. I'll get one for
So if you
Ramona.
know anybody who's interested, I think it's like an associate's degree required. You can apply through central office, school district central office, but if you want to call me, my name's Lisa Thompson, and my number is 664-6106.
Do your people get benefits then through special school, or you would?
Or whatever district we're working for.
Yeah. Whoever it is.
Whoever we're working for. So, well, I hope it helps. My 11-year-old kept saying, "What are you talking about?" I invited her to come with me to see the college. Well, what are you going to talk about? Well, what? What about your job?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
She was like, what would you have to say to anybody?
I have a 12-year-old.
Well, these are people that want to be teachers. They need to know about the job.
Thank you very much.
Good luck with everything.
Thank you. Take care. Sure.
Oh. They need to try this thing out. It's not, that is not, that's not right. It's wrong.
The library, well, the only thing is every minute is of the essence between now and 12:30. It's of the essence between now and 12:30.
Actually, since you put the fan on me.
You know, this was, the vents were closed.
Okay, so
It's not reaching yet.
Maybe if it was more.
I did feel a little different though when you did it first. So maybe if we close the door and it'll get a little chill.
If that's off, that's why it's so hot.
Is there another fan somewhere? That would even help. See, I'm starting to feel it now.
Yeah.
Before it was like
they
this.
were closed. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope my paper's okay. My computer went down with the electrical thing like 3 times.
No.
Things don't always get
Okay.
closed.
So, just so you know, I have, okay, so you can use this one. Thank you so much.
Nice syllabus for my class, just so you have an idea of how the time is broken down. Remember we were talking about lesson plans, and how many still have their student teaching to do? You do? Okay. Anyway, I've got this lesson plan that's coming around now. This is the one that we use at my school. So this is, depending upon what school you're at or what school district you happen to be at, you may have different ones that you have to use.
Is this, excuse me, Carol, is this the one you call the certain
No,
name?
that's not Madeline Hunter.
Okay.
No. That's
It's
our,
just using your school.
that's our own, that's Beaumont. Okay. This is the information on FHA that you need to have.
One more quick question. These were the dogs on them. All of those came out of that book.
Yeah.
That is out of publication, which I cannot even find at the library. I thought they have it there. I want to get a whole copy of that.
If you want to take one of these and make it
I really do. By Thursday, I want to. Or will you be back at Thursday for the last time somewhere, or what's the story?
Okay, after Thursday, I'll just come in as needed. If you all need me to come in for something, I will. But after Thursday, I probably won't be back until I'm ready to collect your papers, unless you need me to come over.
Okay, so maybe Wednesday? I could take it to the library. You said you went to public
You can take one of the books with you today.
Oh, I can? The binder thing, the one that's out of publication, because that is where...
You can take it and get it copied.
Okay. I want to. I would be so grateful.
Okay, you're receiving 2 handouts on public relations. Again, this is how to promote your program. Promote your program, promoting your department. Okay, now, this is some information on the Madeline Hunter lesson plan that's coming around now. And then this is a blank copy of how you could adapt it to your school. And most of the textual materials that are coming out now use the Madeline Hunter form. You know what I was telling you, when you get these textbooks, they've got all of the lesson plans that come with them. Most of them are using the Madeline Hunter form. Okay, now, this is a sample of a lesson plan that my sister and I did. Remember I told you we were in this occupational analysis class, and we did different ones, and they did group projects. So even though I'm in food service and she's in work study, we both came up with a lesson plan that we felt, we both came up with a lesson plan that we knew each of us teach to our kids, and that's on, understanding your paycheck stuff, because when kids get their first paycheck, they do have a lot of questions about it.
Yeah, where'd all my money go?
Where did all my money go? You know,
I've heard that one
and
before.
you want to explain to them about their hours and how the pay period cutoff date is. And I was having to do that with my daughter the other day. She got her first paycheck, and I mean, I was going over with it with a fine-tooth comb, you know, as far as this is what happened. Let's come to find out they didn't take any federal tax out of her check, and
What do you do it once a month, though?
I don't know how they're going to do it. Now, she only had 14 hours on it. I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not, but, so, you know, I'm watching because I told her, I said, you keep your paycheck stubs. You know, I told her we're going to go over them. We're going to keep them in an envelope. But, you know, I'm trying to teach her all these things now so that she'll know. Okay, now, this is a schedule for interviewing a prospective employer. I don't think that I had given that to you all. I can't remember if I did or not. Because we're getting to the end as far as all the handouts. Everybody got that?
Yeah, I think we got this, but that's okay. We'll have to have some more.
Okay. Now, this is the information on the task analysis, some information on doing a task analysis, and this information was taken from the occupational book.
That occupational outlook handbook that you told me about, I did find that for us.
Okay.
They had it
Now,
behind the counter.
And I also got this from my library, and I'm just thinking that it should be at other libraries. This is called an occupier, and I'll pass this around. And I found it in my library, so it should be in all of the, you know, the other regular libraries.
Where did you find it, Norm?
Huh?
Where did you find it in the library?
I just went to the librarian. You know, I just have a very good relationship with the librarian at my school. And when I tell them what I'm looking for, I mean, they just start pulling all this good stuff out. And so when I told them that I wanted to borrow the Occupational Outlook Handbook, I checked it out before school was out. And so she said, well, Betty, I've got something else you may be interested in, you know, and she knows all the different areas we're talking about. So she brought up this occupier. Now, if you'll look, you'll see all these various occupations on it. And so what I did was, I think I copied two. I've got one on a restaurant hostess and one on a restaurant cook-chef, which sort of like gives a breakdown similar to what you would find in the Occupational Outlook Handbook. But I'm almost sure all libraries should have that also. Is someone getting something for... Debbie? Okay. Okay, now, remember when Lisa was talking about how they will ask them questions about whether these kids stayed in child care development or what they were doing? They're asked, but we actually have to do, I actually have to do a follow-up record every year. And this comes from Jefferson City. So before my kids left in June, I made sure that I had an up-to-date phone number and an alternate phone number where I could reach them. And I let them know. I said, now, next school year, I said, I'm going to have to call you. I said, because I have to do a follow-up report. I have to know what you are doing since you graduated. Are you still on the job? Are you, that is, are you on the job in a related field? Are you on a job in a non-related field? Are you in school in a related field? Are you in school in a non-related field? Are you in the military? Are you not employed? And then, of course, they also have an unknown status on there because there will always be some kids that you can't reach. But this has to be filled out every year, the following year, and I call my kids, those kids that I can't reach. I ask my current kids, do you remember so-and-so, they were saying, have you seen or heard from them? But I do try and make my report be as accurate as possible. And I think the state wants to find out, naturally, for all the money that they are putting into the program, They want to know how many kids are remaining in these various vocational areas. So it's not, I think the teachers in the office occupations have to do it. People that have those distributed ed programs, the marketing programs, they have to do it, and I know I have to do it. So this is the follow-up report that has to be done every year. Okay, now keep in mind, going back to what the competency list that Lisa gave you on child development, and I think I gave you one on food service. But what I wanted to show you was when you order them from the instructional materials lab, they come in a packet of, and this is food service, they come in a packet of 10. So depending upon, how your budget is, and of course, you're going to have kids year after year after year. So I said to myself, rather than have to order this, all I really need is one. And then so what I did was I made copies for my subsequent, students that I had for the years that came after. So you can make copies of this now and there is. Remember, Lisa was saying that the certificate isn't a big deal, but kids like to get certificates, especially seniors ready to graduate. They like something to put in their memory book. Again, like Lisa was saying, even though with employers, they want to know what competencies have you mastered, and not just what competencies have you mastered, but to what extent. And on this sheet, you can check on here. Now, what I like about this one is, again, if you look at this sheet, like Lisa said, there's no way you can cover all of it. But you cover the competencies that you feel are most important relative to that particular student's job objective. There's no way you can cover everything. But I feel whatever you do decide to cover, it's best to do an excellent job of covering half of this rather than a poor job of trying to cover the whole sheet. It's just like a textbook. I'd rather cover half a textbook real good rather than cover the whole book and I haven't done a good job. So this is the one in food service, and of course, on the back of this, if you'll notice, they have personal characteristics, job-seeking techniques, and entrepreneurship awareness. Now, they also have this, and of course, the little certificate comes with it, and you can make copies of this. You can put them on colored paper. You can put them on your computer and change them any way you want to. There's so much you can do with these. This one is also for consumer and homemaking education. So they also have these for your regular family and consumer classes, family and consumer science classes, not just occupational. Now, I've had this a while, but again, this one talks about caring for children. I mean, it has a lot of things related to the home, just depending upon what class you would be teaching, and you would adapt this to the particular class. But again, if you get that book from the catalog from the instructional materials lab, they have all the competency areas listed. So for buying a whole thing. Yeah, they're 10 in a pack. But they have the areas listed. Now, they're on the school to work, so they've even got a new one for the school to work. And, of course, what I like about this is, it talks about planning and management, labor, community, health, finance, and, of course, they also have a little part on here on employability competency, which I really, really like. I really, really like. So all those are listed in the area. Any question on that? Okay, now let me give you some information that you need for your task analysis. This is your job task analysis. Okay, the definition of a job task analysis: a listing of all of the duties and tasks that make up a particular job and are necessary for at least entry-level proficiency. And this goes back to what Lisa was saying. The skills that they're teaching them, they want the kids to at least be competent for an entry-level job. Do I need to repeat that definition? Is that okay? Okay. It is essential to identify the specific task performed by workers in the occupation for which students are being trained before, and underline before, an instructional program can be implemented. Do I need to repeat that?
Yeah, from the
Okay.
before part.
It is essential to identify the specific task performed by workers in the occupation for which students are being trained before an instructional program can be implemented. Okay, in developing a task list, it is necessary to focus on what the worker actually does, underline does, in that occupation. And what that simply means is what the employee is being paid for to do. I'll repeat that. In developing a task list, it is necessary to focus on what the worker actually does in that occupation, what the employer is being paid for. For example, if you've got a chef is being paid for producing a product as well as providing a service. That's what he or she is being paid for. Okay. Competencies. Definition of competencies. They are a measure of how well, underline how well, a student has mastered a particular task. And if you just want to look at the one that Lisa gave you, and I'll finish that definition, not just whether the student has mastered it. A measure of how well a student has mastered a particular task, not just whether, and underline the word whether, the student has mastered it. And that's where you, as the teacher, comes in, as you are teaching the competencies on the competency list. And remember, Lisa was saying how you keep, again, this is another part of the filing system. I just used her list. If you'll notice, she has the rating scale starting at the bottom. In no exposure, 1, the student has not mastered it. 2, the student requires some supervision, and of course 3, the student can work independently. So that's a task that student has mastered. And of course then you would check the appropriate category, depending upon how you feel the student has done. Okay, any questions about the definition of a competency? Beg pardon? Where? Good question, because this is new. This is a new... represents the IDs used in computerized tracking software. Okay.
Oh, I think that's what this is, section 2, section
3.
3. Maybe they relate to each other.
Okay. Yeah. She said that this was a new one. So it's been updated since the previous one was published. Because I know mine doesn't have these numbers. And think of the one that I gave you all. I tried it 2 ways. I made a little one, just on a regular 8.5 by 11, depending upon how you want to do it. And then, of course, you know, as you get older, your eyes get... I think I also gave you a copy like this.
Yeah,
so at least, you know, you've got the bigger squares. You can still fold it, you know, put it in a regular folder. But at least, you don't have to, So I really like this one better. But if you see, ours don't have those little numbers in them. Yeah.
I think there might be like sections in that book.
Yeah.
Because they're like
Chapter.
12, 20. That's my guess.
Okay. Okay, now, I wanted to give you this definition because as you, especially those of you that you'll be doing your lesson plans, you're going to come across these terms, and I wanted you to be familiar with them. You've heard of CBE, competency-based education, and I just wanted to give that definition to you. Competency-based education is criterion reference education. Wait a minute. Criterion reference education in which the desired outcomes relating to knowledge, attitude, and behavior are stated as behavioral objectives. And if you take out that lesson plan, okay, generally, when you're writing out your lesson plan, your behavioral objectives are stated in the form of the student will do this or that. The student will. And when in your curriculum, as well as the lesson plans that you get along with the textbook, that's the way they will have them stated. Okay. Any question on any of that? So if you look at the lesson plan, this lesson plan that my sister and I did together, look under lesson objectives. This one right here. If you look under lesson objectives, and again, this goes along with the Madeline Hunter form, stated in behavioral terms, at the completion of this lesson, the student will be able to, number one, explain the difference between gross pay and net pay and describe the deductions taken from an employee's paycheck. Number two, the student will describe the types of taxes consumers pay. Three, the student will describe why and how consumers are taxed. These are the behavioral objectives. This is, again, outcome-based education. These are the outcomes, behavioral goals that you expect the student to master from this particular lesson. That's all it is. What you want this kid to be able to do at the end of your particular lesson. And of course, this particular lesson does follow the Madeline Hunter model. That was one of our assignments we had to do. Okay, now, the components of your job task analysis. And this is so much fun. You know, when you take a lesson like this, you can just, you can use videos, and the kids are just always so interested. You know, when they get that first paycheck, they just really, they want a breakdown of everything. And I just enjoy this lesson because, you know, everyone's paycheck is different. And it just adds for variety, you know, in the lesson when you're doing it. Okay, components of a job task analysis. Number one, you're going to choose one job. And what I did was I'm breaking this down a little bit further than the actual original description that I had given you. You're going to choose one job. Number one, you're going to describe the job. And in parentheses, the specifications of that particular job. And you know where you're going to get this from. Are we together on that? From the Outlook handbook. Whatever job that you selected.
What is that called?
Outlook handbook.
This is your library.
All libraries should have a counter. Okay,
Behind the counter.
Linda says it's behind the counter.
I'm developing my relationship with the library.
Yeah, they don't leave them out. I tell you, they don't leave them out. Okay, number two, you're going to perform a task analysis for the job. That's number two. Perform a task analysis for the job. And what that simply means is what they need to know and be competent in and understand in order to perform this job. What they need to know and be competent in and understand in doing this job. Number three, you're going to list each task and identify where the task will be taught. I repeat, you will list each task and identify where the task will be taught. In other words, will this particular task be taught in class, or will it be taught on the job, as a part of on-the-job training? Okay, and then, number four, you're going to develop a training plan for the job. And in your training plan, you will also identify what will be in-class instruction versus on-the-job training. And of course, there are copies of the training plan that will be available to you. Number 5, you will identify the basic course content. Basic course content. And in parentheses, that's your proposed course of study or your curriculum. That's basically what it is, your curriculum. So you're going to identify your basic course content. Now, this content should be done in units. Okay? You should have units. You should have objectives. Objective for each unit? Oh, yes. For instance, if you look at, well, going back to, if you go back even to my syllabus, if you look at my syllabus, I've got my syllabus broken down into units, and I have, where is it? Yeah. Okay, right. Okay. And of course, you're going to have this in any basic lesson plan. So, you should have, it should be broken down in units, and then you should have all objectives. All units should have a title. No. All units should have a title. Huh? What did you say, Regina? What done here? Okay. Objectives should specify the ultimate behavior expected of students. Objectives should specify the ultimate behavior expected of students, and they describe or define what the learner has to do, to demonstrate the attainment of that particular objective. Now, generally, behavioral performance generally, I'm just saying generally, behavioral, performance, and instructional objectives are used synonymously in your readings. Some books will have behavioral performance, but they all basically mean the same. Behavioral performance and instructional objectives are used synonymously. Now, for those of you that will be going into your lessons, objectives are divided into 3 categories. Objectives are divided into 3 categories. Number 1 is your cognitive area. And in the cognitive area, that basically means your rational learning, knowing, and thinking. Rational learning, knowing, and thinking. And it's okay when you're writing a behavioral objective to say the student will know so-and-so, so-and-so. The student will, strictly cognitive. Okay. The second is affective. Affective. And that is emotional learning. That is caring.
Say that again.
Second one is affective, AFF, and that is your emotional learning. That is your caring, feeling, attitude, interest, and value. Couldn't you see a lot of this in personal relations and child development areas? You would have a lot of affective behavioral objectives. Do I need to repeat that one?
So, for example, you said that the student is going to learn to what, you know what I mean? It's not like that they're necessarily going to learn how to be caring or, you know what I mean?
No. Let me see.
Yeah.
Let me.
Attitude towards people who
Demonstrate their personality.
Yeah. I'm thinking that you could use this area more in child development. Let's say more so than food service.
That's
Right. Okay. Now, in the psychomotor, which is the third area, I can see a lot of this in my area. In the psychomotor, those are your physical skills. Learning, doing, manipulating, speed, accuracy. Sure, dexterity. Now, you would have this a lot, I would say, in the food service area. And definitely in clothing, sure, with the sewing machine. You would have a lot of your psychomotor skills in this area. Do you see the difference between the three, your cognitive, affective, and your psychomotor? Okay, so I just wanted you to know the difference when you're stating your behavioral objectives in your course of study, that you know the difference between the three. And of course, the ones that you would use more, so one, you may use all three, you may use, probably, I know in food service, I'd probably use more psychomotor than any other. But so the ones that you would use are going to depend on the area that you've chosen to do your task analysis in. Okay, so after that, then, again, part of your job task analysis is you want to also show evidence of career growth potential. You want to show evidence of career growth potential. And that simply is, what is the employment outlook for that particular job? And I have a note that you can include that after you've given the job description at the end. At the end, and I'll pull out one of these. In other words, this is a copy of, this particular person did hers on a food service manager. So she goes in to tell, number one, what is a food service manager and exactly what do they do? She tells the working conditions of a food service manager, the personality traits and abilities and aptitudes that are necessary for a food service manager. And I can tell that, you know, there's a lot of cognitive, affective, and psychomotor in all of this.
Would you like that in paragraph form, or would you like that when you say
Right.
this is not?
Okay, this is done in paragraph form. I'll look at the other ones and, you know, see if there's anything any different. Then, of course, you go into your job specification. That is, you know, exactly what does this person do.
Now, how would that be different than the first one?
Okay, you're going specifically, you're giving a further breakdown.
You want to be...
In other words,
blah, blah, blah.
okay, in other words, number one, as a food service manager, respect for employer and all staff members will encourage a fair and pleasant work experience. And what I know for a fact that this person did they did their on-site visitation at a food service establishment. And so what she did was then, in talking with the manager, she chose the manager's job to do her job task analysis on. And so she got a lot of this basic information from the manager. And now he may have even had his own job description, you know, to add to this.
But that's okay.
Sure, it's okay. Another one would be purchase food, supplies, and equipment. Now you're not going to have all this broken down in the description.
Okay, so
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So this is more detailed than the description you're going to get initially in this occupational outlook handbook. You may just have maybe like a couple of general paragraphs, but the job specification actually breaks it down more.
When you decide on sources that we get our information from, when you decide the sources that we get our information from.
Yes, that's number 7 on my list.
Oh, okay.
Number 7 on my list is include sources or references that were used to complete your analysis. That's my last one. Glad you asked.
Well, the food service manager is the same as a restaurant owner, there is overlap in your occupational outlook.
There's a difference between, I would say, because I find that most owners, they're not even there. And you know what I'm saying? They're like really a behind-the-scenes person. Huh?
The manager position still is the same, not as not ordinary, so often it's stuff.
Yeah.
You have to be in there, though, maybe a restaurant owner?
You have to check the book and see.
So it's not in there, you want to see something in the book? You don't want to choose not to.
Yeah, it should be in the book. Okay, now, and so, then of course, you've got your actual task analysis. That is what this person needs to have an understanding of doing. And then the tasks are broken down, and I'll let you look at these. Then there's the training plan. And in the training plan, you've got the work experiences that's on the job versus in-class instruction.
Oh, okay, time to do. Let's say if we had a textile retailing class, and we were working. The idea to do this, the objective of doing this is to share this with the classroom. Like the kids that are going on the job are not going to be going into a manager job.
No, this is leading up to strictly, it can be with your kids, it's going to be entry level. But if you want the option now, you know, you're not going to send kids, you're not going to graduate a kid out of high school ready to be a manager.
Right, but what we're doing this for them, or
You can do it either for an entry level or, like I said, any job related in that particular field.
okay. So if I was doing a sewing class and they wanted textiles and clothing and the retail thing like they have here.
Okay, but now you've got to first come up with one single job.
Okay.
So what is your job?
Manager of a department.
Of what department?
A clothing department, a woman's clothing department.
Okay.
Would that
Make
count?
sure you can find it in the book, if you can find it in the book. So now, even when you do, you've got to be able to make up your curriculum for it.